Let's say you're George Morrow and you have a collection of over 70,000 78 RPM records, and somebody says to you, what do you have by Hoagie Carmichael from the year 1930? Well, either you need another room this size full of 3x5 cards in about a week, or a personal computer, a database manager, and you get the answer in seconds.
6, Stuart. Which one do you want?
Well, I don't know. Today we're going to take a look at one of the most powerful applications on a personal computer, database management, on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible by Leading Edge, makers of IBM-compatible computer systems, including word processing with spelling correction, communication software, and Hayes-compatible 1200 and 2400 baud modems. Leading Edge, with over 1,000 service centers nationwide. Leading Edge, leading the way to the information age. Additional funding is provided by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte. Byte's detailed technical articles on new hardware, software, and languages cover developments in computer technology worldwide.
Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stuart Chaffee, and this is Gary Kildall. Gary, we have a kind of museum of information storage devices here. You know, the good old-fashioned address book, you had your name and number in there. If you had maybe a little more complicated Rolodex system over here, files which you kept in your file drawer or your desk or something like that, maybe one of these big boxes with A, B, C, D going down here. These are all rather primitive ways of storing information, obviously. They take up a lot of room. They're very hard to update. You can only sort them along one dimension, usually alphabetically and so on. That's why we have computers and database managers, fortunately. There are two basic versions of database managers, relational databases and flat file managers. Explain the difference between them.
Well, Stuart, the flat file managers basically just take a sequence of records, names, addresses, whatever, sort them, make a mailing list, very simple operation. Relational systems are based in a very complete mathematical theory. Every piece of information is considered a table. Each line of the table is called an n-tuple. In mathematics, that's called a relation, and that's where the name relational systems come from. Here, this Rolodex, for example, might be considered a table. Name, address, phone number. Might have sales reports over here, geographical territories over here. We could take this table, extract the names, take this same table, put them together, and get a whole new table, take the table of geographical areas, and create yet another table and so forth. And eventually you might get a mailing list out of it.
Okay, Gary, we're going to take a look at some of the top-rated database managers in both categories. We'll see the latest versions of DBase and RBase. We'll take a look at Q&A and PFS Professional File. Now, when you talk about database managers, business applications, you tend to assume you're talking the MS-DOS IBM world. Lots of Macintosh fans out there that think the best way to do database management is on a Mac. We're going to start out with a report on one rather large company that uses the Macintosh for its database management.
Behind every successful office-bound PC is a software program that either speeds up or replaces tasks formerly done by hand. The accounting firm of Pete Marwick in San Francisco has found a way to do both and create a new communications link at the same time. Pete Marwick's graphic arts department has replaced paste-up and billing sheets with an all-Macintosh network, combining Odesta's multi-user Helix database with MacDraw and a LaserWriter to order, bill, and create graphic presentations in as little as 24 hours. The Helix database, running over an AppleTalk network, operates like an electronic assembly line, with the additional feature of moving in any direction or speed required. As work orders are received, they are entered into the database by client account, date of entry, and subject description. The client's rough sketch is digitally reproduced and stored on disk for later printing. The file moves through different stages, accumulating charges automatically according to the time spent on each task. The network permits each authorized user to verify the completion of each step before the final printout. At Pete Marwick, Macintoshes are almost as common as accountants, but in one department, they have found a way to turn a customer database into a department network.
Joining us now in the studio is Dennis Travins. Dennis is production manager with Stanford University's Instructional Television Network. Also with us, Jim Hubbard, a real estate broker with Number One Realtors. Gary.
Dennis, you and Jim are both users of database systems rather than trying to promote a product. And so just how do you use a database in your particular line of work?
At the Stanford Instructional Television Network, we broadcast live computer science and engineering courses out to Silicon Valley directly from our studio classrooms on campus. My job as the video production manager is to manage 6 different studios all through the day with different professors and different staff coming in, student technical directors and different requirements. So I use the database to keep track of all that, besides all the different accounting procedures that are necessary.
Okay. And Jim, you're in the real estate business, I understand. Yeah. And how do you use database?
The database is used to keep track of the property owners that I'm working with. I take an area of 500-600 people and enter that information in the database as far as their addresses and this type of thing, along with their phone numbers, so that I can keep track of contacts that I have with them. Along with, I use the database to do mailings. I do a mail label, and I also do mailings merging with their addresses.
Now, you guys each use different systems. We're going to start out, Dennis, with you. You use PFS Professional File.
That's correct.
And show us how you use it, and then eventually I want you to explain why you picked it.
Okay. What I have here is a outline of a database that I've used that keeps track of all of my people in the studios. I'll punch in some of the data. The first few lines have the particular information about what the job number is. We go through all the functions. I also have a part in my database that keeps track of timesheets. Individual students will come in, enter their names. Offline, they will then put all their particular hours together. I can total them up here at the bottom. Then we can go on. What I've also created here is a rate card. I go through, and there's different fields here where I can enter a number and calculate exactly what the actual dollar amount of those particular.
So you got lots and lots of fields here for each of these records.
Yes, I do. One of the other things that I can do here is I can create reports using my standard database activities. Let's go through here one more time. I'm going to go through here and call up a report using a macro. I'm going to go here, call up a list of macros that I've created ahead of time for my expenses. I'm going to create a crosstab report.
So you're basically getting a report that would combine all that information, summarize it as to what it cost you to do some particular production?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Here, I've had it stop here to make sure that we're going to have this printed to the screen. We go through, and this could either go to the screen or to the printer.
Dennis, how many records would you typically have active at any one time?
I have as much as 365. We're on a quarter system, so I can have 300 to 400 different records working at a time.
Okay.
One of the most powerful reasons I like Professional File is part of the professional PFS family. It allows me to dump this onto a spreadsheet program,
Okay.
and then I use the spreadsheet as a standard accounting
Use that
procedure.
for billing your clients, that sort of thing.
Correct.
Okay, now, Jim, you use something else. You decided to use Q&A from Symantec, and tell me why you used that particular database manager.
Q&A is a very powerful database manager. I usually run anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 properties. And in these properties, I keep track of the last time I mailed them, and also information about the particular properties, bedroom sizes, this type of thing. And so I can access the database, gather information, and I can do a mailing, keep track of the people, and mainly my business is people, so I have to know what's going on.
Jim, the product you use, Q&A from Symantec, is advertised to have an artificial intelligence component. That's a natural language. You can parse natural language. Can you show us how that's used in your particular work?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I'll pull up some forms here that I did a mailing on the 2nd of this month, so I can type in normal English, show me all forms mailed on, say, 4/2/1987, and hit return. Now it's come on forms, which is questioning what it is. It says,
Excuse me, what it's really, it's sort of parsing that sentence to see if it understands every word,
That's
and it has a
right.
question about what you meant by form.
That's right. So it's saying, is it a part of the built-in dictionary or vocabulary, or is there some other information that it's requiring? And if I ask it, now it's saying mailed. It says doesn't understand the word mailed, and probably the reason it doesn't understand it is that in the field it has date mailed, and so if I change that and put in date mailed, it will work. Let's try.
Yeah, so the sentence itself is somewhat sensitive to what data
It has to
fields
be
you
part
have
of the
and things of that
field
sort,
of
yeah.
the database, right?
Okay, and you could teach the program to accept forms mailed, for example.
That's
right?
correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if I add date,
Well, you have to back up there. You think it'll
mailed.
understand
Okay.
that?
All right.
Let's
I
see
think
what
it
happens
should.
now.
Let's see what happens.
Because that
now.
happens to be a field name, I guess, date mailed is.
Okay,
Well, it's asking for
forms.
forms again. So it didn't learn from the last time you told it what you meant forms was anyway, did it? Okay, you're right. It understood at that time.
So it understood it because it was part of the database itself, or a field in the database, because that's all it's understanding.
So the idea, well, first of all, this is running off a floppy disk, so it's a little bit slower than, it's a little disadvantaged in this case. Okay.
There's the forms that, or all the property that I mailed on the 2nd of this month.
Okay, yeah, and the virtue of Q&A, really, and we haven't perhaps shown the best example of it here, is your ability to just enter those kind of natural language entries and query your database and get back reports along a variety of fields and dimensions and so
Right,
on.
absolutely.
And as you use this in your practice of selling real estate, I mean, you're happy with what this does for you.
Does a real fine job. It has a nice word processor, and of course the artificial intelligence is nice for changing and adding like we're doing here. And also it's great for doing a report. When I do a mailing, I like to keep track of who I mailed property to, so I can ask the artificial intelligence to run a particular report or run a mailing report, which I'll do now and show you.
Okay, so you're saying run the mailing report, which means what? Show you what mailings went out?
This
on the
will
most
be
recent date?
everything that I've done a mailing on. It will give me a report.
Okay, well you misspelled the and it couldn't figure that one out. that
Okay,
time.
it's asking me to edit that, so I can press.
Okay, so you've changed the word. Now let's see if it understands that.
And it's saying, shall I
Right.
do the following, run the mailing report? Say yes, and it runs the report showing all of the properties that I've mailed, including the date that I mailed them.
And the theory, Gary, I guess, is that's supposed to be simpler than having to use some complicated command structure in which
And
you
of
have
course,
to
that's
remember
that's
commands.
the extension that people have, is whether it's easier to try and learn the.
But you have to
distinguish
type
language
right,
or
and you have
what,
to use the
yeah.
right words,
Yeah.
etc.
Right,
Okay,
right.
gentlemen, thank you very much. In just a minute, we'll see the newest versions of DBase and RBase. First of all, when you try to pick one particular database manager, sometimes it's hard to find one program that does everything you want. Well, we found an optometrist in San Bruno, California, who uses several database managers in his business. Wendy Woods has a report.
Optometrist Dr. Gordon Epstein needed a computer system to handle the needs of his busy San Bruno, California practice. He tried but wasn't satisfied with any of the software designed specifically for optometry. So he put together his own. Custom named iBase, Ashton Tate's DBase database product is the workhorse of his office. With it, his staff can track inventory, patient accounts, schedule his appointments, and much more.
The computer is a means in which I can make the rules. And if they don't obey the rules, then the machine doesn't compute. And it's also a means of communication between us, because they can advise me on how they want the program to operate.
All of this required plenty of research, and the job isn't finished yet. The doctor recently added Paperback Software's new VP Info to his system. With it, he can compare the time it takes, for instance, to receive supplies from different vendors, or determine which activities bring in the most money. As with many businesses, optometrists are at a crossroads. Caught between changing technology and the limits of various software packages, there's a great deal of confusion, which is why Dr. Epstein, like thousands of others, has had to become as good in computers as he is in his profession. In San Bruno, California, for the Computer Chronicles, I'm Wendy Woods.
With us in the studio now is Tom Kozik, Applications Director with Ashton Tate. And next to Tom is Lynn Lukanen, the Director of Advanced Database Products at MicroRim.
Tom, the two products we've just seen, PFS Professional File, Q&A, are both flat file managers. How does a relational system differ from a flat file manager?
Well, a relational system takes advantage of the fact that a lot of data is often kept in different departments or disparate sets of information. So you can relate information from one file and information that's common in another file. A common example that's often used is invoices to orders. There's a common number generally kept between the two pieces of information that make them related. And so Relational Database Manager links the two files together on that bit of information when you need the information.
Okay.
Okay, now DBase 3 Plus is, of course, one of those, and one of the most well-known, the sort of granddaddy of the database managers. Show us a little bit of this newest version of DBase 3.
All right. What we're looking at right now is the menu-driven assistant within DBase 3 Plus. And what I'm going to do is simply pick up a file called a view file. Very often, users use the same files in, day out, and will set up screens for it, define sort orders, index the files in a certain order. Well, you can save all those settings into one type of file called a view file and simply restore all those settings in one shot.
Okay, with the way you want to look at a particular file.
Now, going across, I can find a given record within this database a number of ways. I can locate it and spell out the conditions that I want to find it under. In this case, I can go out and seek it because I know exactly what I'm looking for. In this case, I know the files are ordered by a customer number. So I can simply type in the customer number, 08292
Okay.
1017.
Whatever his number was.
Yeah, that was the number, something like that. Press return, and now I'm positioned at that record. I can tell by the status line along the lower portion of the screen.
Okay, you don't see the record yet, but the status line is telling you it's found it.
Right, the status line tells me what record I'm pointing at out of the entire database. Pick the edit function, and I can see I'm in one of the pre-created screens. And I can look at the record, and I can page through multiple screens that I've created. And you can create these screens using features of the assistant or with our applications generator, simply paint what you want on the screen, choose the field you want to put out there. Let's step out of there for a second. And you can find information or sift down information. Obviously, DBase is a package that's meant to handle millions of records at a time, and it's kind of hard to work with that many pieces of information. So you can filter down information by creating what's known as a query. Selecting the query, and we'll go ahead and call one Chronicles. Press return. And we're prompted with what we call our advanced query system. I can pick a field, and I can find information on a number of varieties of information. In this case, pick operator, and I can find information that matches, doesn't match, maybe begins with a character, ends with a character. In this case, I'll take something simple. It contains a word. I remember that there's a word out there that contains the word, or a record out there contains the word group. Simply type in group in quotes because it is text information. Press return. Now I can cursor over to display, and DBase is going to search through the database and find the records that meet that condition. After that, I could then say, okay, set the filter to this file. And DBase would limit the database to only the records that met this condition. So it's easier to work with a smaller set of data at a time. Let's go ahead and step out. All the time I've been walking through the features of the assistant, DBase builds a command line along the lower portion of the screen. For example, if I said to pick another view, it says set view to, and we'll build the commands along the lower portion of the screen. Those are the same commands a user would type in at the dot prompt if they were writing a program. So it's prompting you all the way along. You can also step through the commands that I've used since I've been in DBase, and those are kept in a history buffer. And I can even save those to another file and basically write a program by walking through all the menus.
Tom, I know you also have security code aspects of this you can do. We don't have time actually to get into that. If you can get out of DBase 3, and I want to talk to Lynn a bit about RBase. RBase is the other biggie, of course, in the relational databases. How does the approach of RBase differ from DBase?
Well, I think probably the primary way that we're different is that we provide additional tools with the database that allows the users to automate some of the functions that they're doing, such as we've got Application Express, which allows you to automate your applications. We've got Forms Express, which allows you to create very complex forms without programming, or reports, very complex reports without programming.
Okay. You have a problem getting out of DBase 3?
No, I'm just stepping out right now.
No, okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do as soon as Tom gets out of DBase is give us an example of some of that. Lynn, what's the big improvement in RBase System 5 over the original RBase product?
Well, there have been lots of different changes. I think the Forms Express and Reports Express and Application Express has really expanded the product. It is, we've added the multi-user capability. There are all kinds of new financial functions that are inherent.
So we've got RBase up and running now. Maybe you can run through that for us.
Surely. What I'll pick is Application Express, and what I've already done is created an application, and I'm going to actually go in and modify an application that I've already created. It's called Demo. It's reading in the ASCII file into the buffer. We're going to change the menu actions for the main menu. We are going to review. We don't need to review all the actions. We're going to only make a change to one particular action. It's going to be action number 5. Excuse me.
So you're trying to get down to print reports?
I'll say no.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Just as when we build an application, we're going to actually modify the application in the same way. We simply highlight the action that we want this particular menu to be for print reports. We select the table we want to work with. We can use the report that we've already created. We have the option to edit that. We can sort the information in ascending or descending level. We can sub-select or take a portion of the total customer base for our report, and then we can complete our actions. Okay, we don't need to make any other changes, and we're going to save our application. What it's actually doing is writing. It's actually writing the procedure at this time. Instead of writing all of this code,
Yeah, this is it.
right, it's actually writing it for us. The benefit to the user is that it's bug-free code. We don't have to go in and debug it. Okay. What we'll do now is come out of Application Express, and as we choose RBase from the main menu, the application that we are just working on and modifying will come up on the screen.
So I guess in both your cases, you've really made these programs, these database managers, easier to use and not have to be quite as sophisticated a programmer to get anywhere as an end user of these products.
Now, there's a question, I guess, for both of you. It's, recently, IBM announced a long-term strategy that they're going to have a relational database system and standardizing on SQL. What effect does that have on your companies?
Well, we've announced that we're going to follow two different paths. We're going to continue to develop software for the path being the 8088 and 8086 based machines, and we're going to take advantage of the new environments as well as follow the new operating systems in the 80286, 80386 environments as well.
Okay.
Well, not only has IBM announced a SQL database, but it's actually what it's announced is a database that's inherent as part of the operating system.
Yeah.
Okay, and what MicroRIM is doing now, as we've already shown with Application Express, is we're really developing the tools that can set upon a database. We've chosen RBase as that structure. Why can't it be used for another database?
Right.
Okay.
Tom, Lynn, thank you very much. That's our brief look at database managers. Stay with us. We'll have this week's computer news in just a moment. In the Random Access file this week, if you're waiting in line for a Toshiba T3100 portable, you may be in for a long wait. Toshiba announced this week that in light of the new tariffs on Japanese laptops, it will no longer export the T3100 or the T1100 into the United States. The new 100% tariff has effectively priced the Japanese laptops out of the U.S. market. The good news is that Data General has released a new laptop, the DG12T. It has a Super Twist LCD display with a backlight that can be turned on or off and a 10 meg hard drive. It has a dual-speed CPU, one floppy drive, and it weighs in at 12 pounds. This is a good time to be buying an IBM XT. With the introduction of the PS2 computers, IBM has slashed prices on the XT. You can now buy an XT including monochrome monitor for under $1,000. That is clone territory. The first major report on the new IBM PS2 computers is out from Future Computing, the Dallas-based research firm, and IBM gets good grades. The 35-page report says the question is now not whether, but when IBM will reestablish its leadership in the personal computer field. Meanwhile, back at the clone ranch, the clone makers are hard at work. Phoenix Technologies says it may have a PS2-compatible ROM BIOS chipset in 6 months. Chipsen Technologies and Paradise Systems, two other would-be clone suppliers, reportedly had PS2 machines apart and under analysis the morning of the IBM announcement. Plus Development, makers of the hard card, have just announced a new 40-megabyte version of the hard drive on a board. It's out now and priced at $11.95. Time for a look at software in this week's review from Paul Schindler.
You know, you might as well throw away your data if you store it on a hard disk you never back up. Because, as sure as the Great Quake in California or the next New York blackout, someday your hard disk will go south and you'll be left holding the bag. If you own an Apple Macintosh with a hard disk, you need HFS backup. Now, it opens with a nice animated graphic which shows clearly what the program does. It backs up all kinds of files from the hard disk to floppies. HFS backup is flexible. You decide what to back up, changed files or selected files. Plus, you can print a list of files and track a lot of information about them that the Mac normally doesn't reveal. Of course, HFS backup tells you how many disks are required before you start the backup so you can format enough to finish. HFS backup for the Apple Macintosh, $50 from Personal Computer Peripherals Corporation of Tampa, Florida. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Paul Schindler.
Aldus Corporation, makers of PageMaker, will go public with a $32 million stock offering. 2 million shares will be put on the market. Digital Research has announced its entry into the desktop publishing field with GEM Desktop Publisher. DRI says you can run GEM DTP after reading only 2 pages of the manual. It runs on any 512K PC and will also run on the new IBM PS2 computers. A high school in Alabama decided to use some desktop publishing software to create its own blank report card forms. The trouble is some hackers got onto their classroom PCs and duplicated the report cards and started selling blanks to other students. The hackers have been expelled and the school is designing new counterfeit-proof report cards. In Germany, computer poker machines are popular. There are 160,000 of them scattered throughout the country, but some German hackers cracked the code of the machines and were able to predict the machine's sequence of play, creating a slew of winners. The hackers have been selling their discovery to German gamblers, and programmers are hustling to reprogram the machines. Finally, what do executives do with their PCs anyway? Well, a study by Epix, a PC software house, found that 40% of executives use their office PCs to play games, an average of 15 minutes a day. An Epix executive said he's not sure that's such a bad idea. He said taking a needed break and playing a game probably increases overall productivity. That's it for this week's Chronicles. We'll see you next time.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible by Leading Edge, makers of IBM-compatible computer systems, including word processing with spelling correction, communication software, and Hayes-compatible 1200 and 2400 baud modems. Leading Edge, with over 1,000 service centers nationwide. Leading Edge, leading the way to the information age. Additional funding is provided by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte. Byte's detailed technical articles cover the latest in microcomputer technology throughout the world. Byte, the international standard.